All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Mind of A Geniuz podcast. And today I have a genius with me. I have with me Judge Armando Marroquin. And I absolutely admire and respect this man just because when you talk about people who provide value without expecting anything in return, I see you. And there's been so many times where you have supported us without necessarily like expecting anything in return or asking for anything in return. You've been at our opening. You've been really always there to support us. And I remember there's been times where you're like, this guy is the marketing genius or he's the marketing pro. And I'm like, I haven't really done anything to deserve that love. And I really,
Not true.
I really want to say I really appreciate you. I respect you for who you are.
Thank you.
And the work you're doing.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be included in your list.
Oh, yeah, you're a genius.
But probably more importantly, I remember, I think we connected through social media initially.
Yes.
And what I do remember seeing is some of the work that you guys were doing back then, and how different it was from what everybody else that I was used to seeing what they were doing.
Yeah.
Which I really respect. I love people who think outside the box. And I know that when it comes to marketing, sometimes that's something that people try to find, but I know it can be difficult to find it. But if you get that, it's a great niche to have, and I think you guys have definitely been doing it for a while now.
No, I would say you embody what my philosophy about marketing is, which is always providing value. And I think that is the true definition of what marketing is. And so I definitely, respect you in that regard a lot.
Well, thank you. I respect you too.
It's a lot of
that reminds me of Gary Vee. That's like a Gary Vee thing, right? Provide value.
Look at you. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, yeah.
That's how you I like that. I'm a huge Gary Vee fan too.
Are you really?
Yeah, absolutely. I learned most of my marketing from Gary Vee.
So I will tell you that while I'm on the bench right now, back in private practice, one of the things that we started doing was we started posting videos just about law related videos. In other words, we would just provide legal information out to whoever watched the video, whether they could use it. Hopefully they could use it.
Yeah.
Didn't necessarily mean they were going to come to us, but at least they were provided some type of value.
Yep.
Right. And we started doing that back then. When I got on the bench, we try to take it a little bit farther by providing more information.
Yeah.
The difference being that I could practice law back then. Now I can't practice law, but I could still provide information, and I can still give people maybe a sense of what it would be like to go into court. So sometimes we'll actually film cases or things that happen in court just so people can see what's going on in court. So that way that transparency level's there. But more importantly, that way people aren't as scared when they walk into a courtroom.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, I think, and we'll come to that, but I think immediately when people think about a courtroom, they think scary.
Of course.
So I love that you use social media to break that barrier.
Well, we're trying. We're trying. Yeah, definitely trying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work, but we are trying.
You're doing amazing at it.
Well, thank you.
So before we really dive into it, which we've kind of already started, this is how good I know the conversation is going to go. I really wanna get into some icebreaker questions.
Sure.
And this is more movie related, so it's going to be rapid fire.
Okay.
So yeah, this is movie personalities. All right.
Okay.
All right. So we start with. Would you
Well,
rather?
hold on. Let me preface this. Who do I prefer more?
Yes.
Or more like me?
No. Who do you prefer more?
Okay. All right.
Yes.
We got you. I got you.
All right.
Okay. Go.
Tom Hanks or Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford.
Okay. Harrison Ford or Julia Roberts?
Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford or Robert De Niro?
Ooh. Toss up. I'm gonna lean more towards Robert De Niro.
Okay. Robert De Niro or Sandra Bullock?
Oh, Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro or Denzel Washington?
Oh man. I'm still gonna go Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro or Bruce Willis?
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro or Nicole Kidman?
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro or Brad Pitt?
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro or Johnny Depp?
Robert De Niro.
Wow. Robert De Niro or Morgan Freeman?
Ooh. Rapid fire. I'm going to go with Morgan Freeman on that one.
Okay, there you go. Morgan Freeman or Leonardo DiCaprio?
Oh, Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman or Tom Cruise?
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman or Keanu Reeves?
Ooh. Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman or Robin Williams?
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman or Mel Gibson?
I still say Morgan Freeman.
All right, Morgan
Yes.
Freeman wins.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
Morgan Freeman is the GOAT. You know, after I remember watching Bruce Almighty. I don't know
I was
if
going
you
to
ever
say,
saw
if he
it.
played God,
Yeah.
right, like you, I mean, you, yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely love Morgan Freeman. All right, so Judge Armando Marroquin chooses Morgan Freeman over everybody. So, yeah, top dog. All right, amazing. So I really want to quickly dive into, you know, because I know that you've lived a quite fulfilling life with everything you've been able to do for community and in just in a service way. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What brought you to this place that you're at right now?
Sure. So I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas.
Wow.
I was actually raised in Laredo, Texas. After I graduated high school from Laredo, I attended University of Texas at San Antonio, UTSA.
Woo.
Go Runners. Once I finished school there, I actually started working a marketing / managerial job with Kmart.
What?
Which, not a lot of people know what Kmart is, but it was a marketing job. I got to travel the country. It was a great experience. And after working there for about 6 months to a year, that's when I attended law school at Thurgood Marshall School of Law in Houston. When I graduated from Thurgood, I actually moved back to Webb County, which is Laredo, and I started at the Public Defender's Office. And my wife now, at the time when we started dating, was actually living here in the Valley. She's originally from San Antonio. She was living here in the Valley. She got a job at McAllen Medical.
Okay.
We talked about maybe living somewhere in between, where I would drive back to Laredo and she could drive this way.
Wow.
We talked about that for, I don't know, maybe a month. And then we finally decided that the best thing to do was for me to move this way. So I
you
moved down.
caved.
I did. Yeah, I was not going to win that battle.
Yeah.
So I ended up over here, got a job at the DA's office. I was there for a few years before going off in a private practice.
Wow.
And then I was in private practice for, I'd give or take about maybe 16, 17 years before I ended up taking this position that I'm in right now.
Wow. So let's go back because, you know, you went to law school in Houston.
Yes, sir.
What inspired you to get into law in the first place?
So there would really, I've told a few people this story, but there was really two incidents in my life that really pushed me towards the law. The first, interesting enough, was when I was young. I don't remember the exact age, but I was living in Laredo. I've got a lot of family in Brownsville. My parents put me on a bus, which I'm sure people wouldn't do that anymore, but they put me on a bus and they sent me down to Brownsville. So I sat right in back of the driver on the bus, and I just remember at one point there was an elderly gentleman who ended up sitting next to me who was probably a winter Texan. Yeah. And I vividly remember the conversation going something like this with him. He asked me, you know, what did I want to do when I get older? And of course, when you're that young, all you know is, oh, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Yep.
So I said lawyer. And I always remember him saying, well, you know, your people need to stick to other things. Your people are better at other things than that.
Oh my
You should
God.
do something different. That always stuck in my head, right? Now, mind you, I was, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years old, something like that. But it was something that kind of struck a chord in me.
Wow.
Fast forward to high school. And in high school, I was the only senior arrested on senior skip day.
Oh, wow.
It's an interesting story.
Yeah.
They raided our senior skip day. And so we actually, I say we, but several of us that were seniors moved to another party location. And I decided for some reason to be the person who was going to wave all the people in.
The hero.
Yeah, not so much. So when a bunch of, I think they were sheriff deputies showed up, I was the person outside I was taken into custody.
Oh my God.
I was put in the back of a patrol car. I think I was 18 years old at the time. I just turned 18, as a matter of fact. And I remember thinking, as they were putting the handcuffs on me, oh, they're just scaring me. And then on the trip to county jail, I still remember thinking, man, these guys are really giving me a scare. I'm gonna be okay. 8 hours later, after being in the holding cell for about 8 hours, they allowed me to call my parents.
Oh my God.
Who had to come pick me up. But I remember the fear that I felt. I remember the anxiety that I had. I remember I was actually angry too, because I was trying to explain something to them and they wouldn't listen. And so those are two things in my life that really impacted me. And when I went through that, I remember saying, like, this is something that if I do become an attorney, I can be the voice for those who don't have one. So I would say that in private practice, that was one of the things that I'd like to try to do, is speak to my clients, kind of get to know what was going on in their heads, get to know what their cases were about, but hopefully give them a sense of, well, at least somebody's listening to me.
Yep.
Because that's how I never wanted anybody else to feel the way I did that day.
Yeah. That's insane. I mean, for everyone, there's a story that really moves them to make a certain decision in their lives. And I think, like, those two stories those are enough to get you to say, I want to see something change.
Well, it's better than saying that was my villain story.
True,
right?
True.
Yeah.
You got a point. And so, obviously, you went into private practice, but now you're a judge.
Yes, sir.
You sit on the bench. What even inspired you to go that route? Because that comes with a lot of its own challenges and everything.
So I will say, being in practice for the time that I was in practice, and I was really blessed to be able to do some different things in private practice. One of the things that really pushed me to run for the bench and to be kind of in the position that I'm in now was, and I go back to thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
And this is no way, shape, or form a mean of disrespect to anybody who serves currently on the bench. But I just thought that there was some better ways to do some things, some better ways to do some case management. And I had the opportunity when I was in private practice to actually go and do work outside of our area, in other counties, in federal courts outside of the area. And I learned a lot from those places, and I saw how they were able to maybe move things more efficiently, how things could actually work a little bit easier, so that way maybe attorneys could still practice, litigants, their time wasn't wasted so easily. And so that was one of the main reasons that I decided to do it, because I really felt like, okay, I think I can make a change. I can't make a change. I could make a change in at least one court.
Yeah.
And again, that is in no way, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody else who's there. Everybody has their own way of doing things. This is just the way that I felt like I needed to serve my community by showing them something different.
Yeah. And I like that. I know that you are a pace setter. You try to really bring new things and new perspective, new ideas. And so in throughout your journey to becoming a judge, what were some of the challenges that you faced? Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't an easy ride.
Right.
To get in that position.
So by nature, I am an introvert.
Yeah. I don't know about that.
I really am. I'm good at faking it, I think. I've gotten a little better at faking it. But I'm an introvert by nature. And one of the things is, if you're putting yourself out there and you want to get involved in politics, you got to put all that behind you, because unfortunately what happens with a lot of people who are introverted, people consider them conceited because they're not talking or what have you. And so I had to overcome that with myself, right? Some of the other things was, obviously, I'm not originally from the Valley. So one of the hurdles that I had to get over was convincing people, like, just because I'm not from here doesn't mean that I don't understand this area. My kids were born here. I've worked here for so long. This is my home now. While I might have grown up in other places, this is my home. This is where I've raised my family. This is where I've, settled down at. That was another issue that I faced along the way too. And, you know, I mean, some of the old politics, I mean, obviously politics in certain areas is a little different. If you're not on the in, it can be a little more difficult to try to break in there. So that sometimes created some issues with me in certain places. Yeah.
But how do you think you did it?
I had a lot of help from a lot of good people.
Okay.
I had a lot of friends who I would not be in the position that I'm in without the help of some really good friends, some really great mentors who were willing to show me the way, give me advice. I mean, I would love to say I did it on my own, but that would be the biggest lie.
Oh, yeah.
I stand here only because I had a lot of people that were willing and saw potential in me to be able to be in this position, and they're the ones who helped get me to where I'm at today.
Yeah. Did you use any of the marketing skills from the past to help as well?
I you know what? So yes or no. So interesting enough, I ran a few years back for another court, and I was unsuccessful. However, when I did run, what we tried doing, which really kind of freaked people out, was we started going live on, and we actually got this idea from some friends of ours who at the time were helping us with our social media, and they said, "Hey, let's put on a Instagram live and a Facebook live, and let people ask you questions."
Wow!
So we were doing some really unorthodox things back then, and I don't think anybody else was really doing it, and I got a lot of flack for it.
Really?
Because people are like, "That's not judicial. People should not do those types of things." But I think in reality, what I've come to realize is, number one, if you're not an attorney or you don't have any cases at the courthouse, then chances are you probably don't understand really what goes on there. You don't know who the people are, and you probably don't care who the people are. You probably shouldn't, right? And so what I realized early on was, okay, well, there's got to be another way for us to communicate to those who don't come in. Let's show them kind of what we're doing. Let's also show them that, hey, you don't have to be afraid of us or afraid of what we do, and this is how the system works. And so those I mean, you could call it some marketing skills. I don't know if I would call it marketing skills, but we just try to do things differently.
Yeah. No, and I like that because, you know, a lot of times people really stick with what they know. And I believe when we started doing, you know, our version of marketing, even in the legal world, we got a lot of stick for it too.
Right.
You know, people, you know, criticizing, and now everyone is doing it. But, you know, most people don't like to think outside the box.
They don't,
because they don't like to go outside their comfort zone. And I love that you do that a lot.
Well, when I realize, and I'll tell you this, and I commend you guys for it, is the only way we grow, right, is by being uncomfortable.
Yes, absolutely.
And one of the best advice that anybody gave me when I was actually out campaigning was, if you're in a room and you feel comfortable, you're probably in the wrong place.
Room. Yeah.
Right? You want to go to places where people don't know you, where you're having to introduce yourself, where you're having to talk to them and get to know them, and more importantly, them to know you. And again, because I'm an introvert, you know, it was hard. It still is, in some respects, to go up to people and say, "Hey, how you doing?" Because I've also had people say, like, "Leave me alone." Right? Okay, man. All right, cool. You know, or women who I've approached and said, you know, "Hi, how you doing? I'm you know, Armando Marroquin. I'm running for this court, what have you," and you know, kind of give me like weird looks, you know, side eye stuff like that. So, but anyways, yeah. So yeah, going back to what you're saying,
it's a really good point. You know, you talk about being an introvert. I don't believe it one bit, because there's been times where we'll be out at events and you introduce me and say, "Hey, this is Sam, this is whoever," you know, make that connection. So
only because I know him. That's why I'm introducing.
That's amazing. That's great. I love that. And so I want to jump into just you being a judge. I am pretty sure you've experienced certain cases that has really impacted you in any way, shape, or form, or has changed, you know, just the psychology on how you even think or look at things. Is there any one of those cases that you can talk about?
Well, so let me answer it this way. So I sit on a county court of law. All right, a county court of law here in Hidalgo County. We have jurisdiction over misdemeanor cases, which are, you know, criminal misdemeanor cases. All right, so the worst that can happen there is you can go to jail for a year. Yeah. All right. We also we listen to cases that are civil cases. car wrecks or people suing each other for contract disputes where the amount of controversy is less than $750,000.
Yeah.
But we also deal with family cases. Family cases can be really cool stuff like adoptions,
Yeah.
or the opposite of that, which is child custody.
Yeah.
Divorces, name changes, things of that nature. What I will tell you is the cases that I always have the most trouble with personally are always the family cases. And, you know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and it can be very daunting if you let it be, because in some of these cases we're making decisions that are going to affect families.
Yeah.
Some for the rest of their lives, some for the next couple of years. So it can be a very difficult thing. And of course, there are two attorneys, or not always, but sometimes they're represented by attorneys. Sometimes people come in by themselves.
Yeah.
So we've got to sit there, we have to listen, and we've got to kind of weigh things out. Because kind of like when you were a kid, right? And maybe somebody accused you of doing something. And if you know, do you have any brothers or sisters? They say you did it, you say they did it, and then whoever you're with, your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, they got to decide. Okay, who's telling me the truth here?
Yeah.
And sometimes on some of these cases, it comes down to that. It comes down to, is the child better off with mom, better off with dad?
Yeah.
Is the child better off with neither? I mean, how do you weigh these things out? And so we're always looking at what's in the best interest of the child.
Yeah.
But that's on a case-by-case basis. And those are the cases that I will tell you I lose sleep over. I really do. Yeah. I mean, they do affect me.
Yeah.
They do affect me, because I know that the decisions that I make, and I hope and pray that I am making the right decisions based off what's been presented to me.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You hope. And of course, I'm sure somebody will call me out for that, but it's the truth.
No, it is the truth. I think that a lot of people, you know, we really don't know all the facts or all the answers or whatever. You can only deal with what's presented to you,
Right.
and kind of make a decision from there.
Right.
And so that's why I find it really tough what the job you all do. And yeah, it does have huge impact on people's lives. And so that goes into the next question. How long? What's the longest sentence you've ever given to someone with a misdemeanor? Would it be a year then?
Yeah, that's the longest.
Okay.
Yeah. When you go up to a district court, which are the courts that listen to felony cases, that's very different, because they're talking about up to death penalty cases. I mean, all the way up to that. We fortunately only deal with misdemeanors. So typically what we see are shoplifting cases.
Okay.
People who get busted with a small amount of marijuana or maybe some pills. DWIs is a big thing, obviously.
Those, yeah.
Assaults, right? Those are a big thing that we see a lot of. But those kind of cases, if you think about it this way, what is a murder? Typically, a murder is an assault gone bad.
Yeah,
right? Basically. Starts off as something small and ends up like that, right? So they can turn into those things, but luckily we just deal with the smaller ones.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yes, it is.
Because I know that, again, like, decisions can be made that can affect someone's life for forever.
Well, and I'll tell you. So look, most judges are. Oh, I shouldn't say most. All judges are human.
Yes.
Which means because they're human, they have we all have personalities. We all have egos.
Yep.
We all have good days and bad days. Mm-hmm. And so, one of the things that we always have to remember is, regardless of how I'm feeling that day, regardless of the mood I'm in, regardless of what just happened earlier, every case is different.
Yeah.
And every case that comes in front of me, I need to give my full attention to. Now, if you have, let's say, 150 cases set on one day, right? That can be overwhelming.
Yeah.
However, that being said, there are certain safeguards that are put into place to make sure that, for the most part, we do what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And your typical court down here will, on a normal day, will listen to at least 100 cases, right?
Wow.
And there might be a mix of cases in there, or what have you. I'm talking about. Sorry, I should probably say county courts.
Yeah.
District courts are a little different the way they handle their dockets, but most county courts are going to have at least 100 cases. Some will have a lot more. It just depends. And then obviously we had the pandemic, which really kind of put a lot of things on standby. So. We've been slowly but surely, we've all been kind of catching up on that.
Yeah.
And I think for the most part, at least on the county court side, we're pretty even when it comes to taking care of all those things. So the courts have done a real good job in trying to get people back to where we should be. But now moving forward, we'll see where that goes, right?
Wow. I mean, it's incredible to know, because I personally don't know much about that system, because again, I'm not in that world. And I think for the average person, they don't understand what goes into some of these decisions or some of the work involved.
So now that you say that, so one of the things that we try and do is we put out videos every couple of weeks. We used to do it every week. That became kind of daunting, so we've switched it up a little bit. But the purpose of us putting out videos is just to kind of share general information about the law, so that when people walk into court, whether it's with us or somebody else, that they get a feel for, okay, this is what to expect.
Yeah.
Hey, at least I know a little bit, right? I'm not walking in blind.
Yep.
I've had some positive responses from a lot of people. I've had some negative responses too, but I think overall the response has been positive, only because, hey, well, I didn't know that.
Yep.
Hey, well, thanks for that info. I didn't know that.
Yep.
Right. And I will tell you, and having been in private practice, dealing with people who had never had any issues before, then all of a sudden they have to go to court. It's scary.
Yep.
It is super scary.
Yep.
And so one of the things that we always preach there at the court is every single person that comes in here, think like, the analogy we always use is like, almost think of them as one of your family members, how freaked out they would be, and how you would want them treated, right? Yeah. Like, treat them like you would want to be treated if the shoe was on the other foot. Yep. And so that's something that we constantly talk about in our court, and we're trying to practice that.
So you need a show.
No, not at all. But I think it's important because more than anything else, I think if people feel respected and they feel heard, then they feel like, okay, the system's doing what it's supposed to do. Yep. And I think what happens in some areas is people will come into court, they don't feel respected, and more importantly, they don't feel heard. And I don't know about you, but if somebody's suing me or accusing me or doing something to me, I want to at least be able to tell my side. Yep. You might rule against me. You might not go with what I said, but at least I got to tell you.
Yep. Listen, that's all it takes. Yeah. And I think it comes down to the human aspect.
For sure.
Of like really making sure that the people we have in some of these, situations or positions really understand that just the human aspect of things. Because we all make mistakes. And, I always tell people, it's like, no one has it all figured out. We always make mistakes. Obviously, you don't make a huge mistake like, committing a felony or anything. But even those are considered mistakes in some sort.
And it does. Yeah. And I will tell you, I've represented so many people. Yeah. Whether it was a bad day. Yeah. It was a mistake. Yeah. For whatever reason. That doesn't mean that you're a bad person. Yes. That just means that, hey, 100%. It was a bad day, a bad decision, what have you. Is there a way that we can correct this for you and put you in a position that this won't affect you for the rest of your life? Yep. That was always, I guess, our motto when we were in private practice. Yeah. Now here from the court, my focus is more on let's educate the public on what we do. And more importantly, after we've educated the public with what we do, they'll be more educated so that when they go talk to lawyers or they, represent whatever they do, that at least they'll have knowledge. Yes. They'll know. They won't be so scared, and it'll help the process move quicker, as opposed to having it like kind of, which unfortunately is what happened with COVID, have them stuck in a rut, and we're waiting for something to happen because nobody knows what's going on.
Yeah. That's a very good point. And I love that you're focused on, again, providing value, educating people. I watch the videos. I see you blur out faces and everything. I'm like, okay, he's getting technical here.
Yeah. I wish I knew how to do that.
You have an amazing team, and
they are great.
I see that with the camaraderie that you have with them. So it's amazing. And I guess the next thing I want to ask is, has there been any surprising or unexpected thing that has happened in your courtroom? I don't know, like someone going crazy, or
we've had some a few. Yeah. I can remember an incident of a gentleman who they were taken into custody, and he took off and ran, and
oh wow,
they had to catch him, and they actually caught him, I think, because he was jumping over a fence.
No.
And he got caught on the fence, and that's how they brought him back. The funny thing about the courthouse is the criminal cases are, people who are involved in criminal cases for the most part, pretty much behave themselves when they're there. It's really the family cases where people get out of hand. And I will tell you that there has been altercations on so many family cases that I can think of just off the top of my head. I can think of like several incidents that have happened in court or right outside the courtroom. Because the problem with family is you have so much emotion that's involved.
Yes, 100%.
And unfortunately, sometimes that emotion is what clouds judgment, right? And I wish, of course, it's easier said than done. Everybody could be even keeled, but that's not the case, right? When you have all that emotion and you have feelings and you have, the hurt and all this other kind of stuff. And, one of the great things that we do that we really push for is what's called mediation, right? And on these cases, what we do is we'll send all the parties to go speak with a mediator. A mediator's an unbiased third person who will sit the parties down in separate rooms and try to work with them to see if they can resolve issues, right? And actually, I used to do that when I was in private practice. And I will tell you that the really good ones, the real good mediators are those who are able to kind of break those problems down to their very basic things and get these people to kind of work out some of their issues. Maybe they don't resolve the whole case, but what if they resolve 3/4 of a case? So then when they come back to court, there's only a couple of things that we have to resolve, right? But that's the human aspect of what you deal with, right? And you would think, like, oh, no, it's all the law, but no, but it's not. The law is one part of what we do, right? But you have the human, you have the emotion, you have the psychology, all of that goes into it too. So that's where you can get interesting, get real interesting.
And okay, so this is kind of bonus that I kind of want from you, bonus question. Being in the courtroom for so long and dealing with a lot of family and, divorces whatsoever, what is some advice you can give to people on staying married? Because, it's almost become like a major issue that a lot of people face.
Right. So my wife would say, happy wife, happy life. That's what my wife would say.
That's a great saying.
I would say number one thing is communication. And I will tell you that we've seen over and over again a lot of issues that arise in marriage. A lot of it stems from communication. Whether it's, hey, you're not paying enough attention to me. Whether, hey, you're working too much and I feel neglected. There's so much stuff that goes into that, but I would say the number one thing, just like with any relationship, is communication. And if people, look, I also marry people, and I will tell you more than a few times when I've married people, I've had a conversation with them and I've said, hey, look, at the end of this whole thing, right, you guys go home. All this cool stuff that you're doing, all these people go home. So it's just you two, right? Just remember to talk to each other, right? Sometimes that's difficult for people. I don't know why, but some people have a very difficult time communicating their wants, their desires, and then more importantly, their issues. And if you don't do that and it bottles up and then it can come out in other ways, and, fortunately, that's when you get infidelity, you get all these other issues that really, create those issues that, make people break up, separate. But that would probably be the number one thing.
Communication. Has there ever been a time where you married a couple and you're like, That's probably not going to work.
So, I tell this story a few times. There was a couple that got married, and I'm sure they won't. Hope maybe they'll see this. I don't know. So they're going through their vows, and the guy kind of almost breaks down, and he's talking to her, and he's telling her how much he cares for her, and she's a blessing. And and when he finishes, I said, "Oh, it's beautiful. Ma'am, would you like to say something to him?" And her response was like, "Well, I mean, I guess we're here. We might as well just finish it." I mean, something to that effect.
Oh my God!
I just remember thinking like, "Wow." Like, I don't know how I would have reacted to that.
Oh, that's
and
brutal.
I was just kind of nodding my head, and I said, "Okay, moving along, right?" But yeah, that one is always kind of taking
That's
me
brutal.
back. It was brutal.
Yeah.
It really was, because the guy was pouring his heart out, and then unfortunately she was kind of like, "I mean, we're here, Now, I don't know if I'm sure there was a backstory to that. I just didn't know it, but yeah.
Maybe there's an inside joke or something, but that's
He wasn't laughing, so I don't know if it was a joke. But you might be right. You might be right.
I pray they're still together.
So do I.
Yeah.
So do I. Yes, I do too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I, the other thing I was going to say, because I talk about communication, but I also think it's important when you're bringing two people together, that you communicate before you get married, not after you get married.
Yep.
Because it seems to me like when some people get into a relationship, they don't talk about a lot of things. Just like, "Oh, I love you and you love me," and that's it, which is great. But I think if they were to actually have conversations about finances, kids, all these other things, maybe they would figure out like, hey, maybe we're not the best fit. We love each other, but maybe we shouldn't go that extra mile. So I forgot to mention that too.
No, I agree. This is a very important tip. I think, having the tough conversations. A lot of people avoid those tough conversations.
Very much so.
And they allow love to cloud the judgment. And I think, it's really, really important to have the tough conversations. And you sometimes avoid a heartbreak before it gets too far.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Wow.
And then they end up back in the courts.
Yep.
And it's not happy because we're not doing a marriage. Now we're doing a divorce, and now they hate each other's guts.
Yep.
And so, I think I've brought it up to a few couples. I'm like, "Hey guys, at one point, you guys really liked each other.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's happened, but let's maybe remember that. At
Yeah.
one point, you guys really did care about each other, right? Now you all can't stand each other. I get it. But let's just remember that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure you've seen, we all see how ugly it can get.
Yes.
How ugly it can get.
Baffles. I was thinking about that this morning. It baffles me to where, you can see, an amazing couple, happy in the beginning, and towards the end get absolutely nasty. And I think that, like you said, we forget the fundamentals. It's like at one point you absolutely were in love with this person.
Right.
So like, what changed? Like, at least there needs to be some decency.
Well, if you're ever on social media and you see a new couple,
Yeah.
and they're posting about each other every single day,
Yeah.
and then after about 6 months, then like they're only posting selfies of themselves or whatever, then you're like, I wonder if something
What happened?
What
Yeah,
happened?
yeah. I mean, life
That's
happens.
the new way, I guess, of showing that
You broke
having
up.
issues. Yeah.
Yeah. Life happens.
It does.
And I personally, agree. And I personally think those conversations need to be had before it even gets to the altar
For sure.
or to the courtroom, to prevent more heartbreak. And especially when kids are involved.
And that's the thing is, look, I'm real big on mentorships, right? I've been very fortunate in my life to have some great mentors.
Yeah.
And that's why I've been able to be somewhat successful in my career, because I had great people who showed me the way, right? Well, one of the things about mentors is when I started in my career in law, they gave me a lot of advice. And I'll never forget this one piece of advice, because I live by it every day, which is, as an attorney, you take on other people's problems. All right? Well, the problem with you taking on other people's problems is, if you have your own problems and you don't know how to deal with your own problems, and then you go home to a home that is full of more problems, then you're going to crack eventually. You're going to get into vices and all kinds of other things. And I used to think that only applied to the legal world, but it really doesn't. So if you look at most people nowadays, we've all got issues.
Yes.
We all got stuff going on.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So you think about how many people, if they were just focused on getting their home life good,
Yeah.
how much happier they would be in the long run. Because you might be able to deal with all kinds of craziness at work or what have you, but at least you go home and it's your
safe
fortress of solitude,
Yeah.
right? Like remember was it Superman? Like he would go to his place
Yep.
and he was cool. Like it was great. And I don't think enough people focus on that.
Wow.
And I'm not saying it's always going to be, rainbows and lollipops, but if you have it good at home, then it's going to be okay. You want to go home.
Yep, 100%.
Right? But I'm sure you and I both know people who are like, I don't want to go home.
Yep, they dread going home.
I hate being home. Yeah, I don't want to be with this person.
We're going to have another one of this podcast just talking about relationships and marriage, because I absolutely love it. And I was listening to a podcast where, he said, you have to treat your marriage as another full-time job. The same amount of time and effort you put in your job, it's like your marriage, your kids, it's all a different set of job that really need to put in the effort. And so, I love that you say it. And I think for someone who deals with that often, I guess my question is, how do you make sure that when you come home, you don't carry some sort of baggage or anything?
So I will say that at the beginning of my legal career, that was difficult. It really was. And I think as you get older, sometimes we get wiser, and we figure out how we can compartmentalize some of those things so that way you don't end up taking it home. Even when I first got into this position, when I took the bench, it was difficult at the beginning on some of these family cases because I was sitting at home mulling over them, right? And eventually I had to realize, like, hey, like you got to leave that here. Like, number one, your kids don't care. My kids never cared that I had like all this craziness going on in my office or in my life. They just care about, hey, you're gonna pay attention to me, right? My wife, Sonia was pretty good about that, but I mean, at some point she was like, okay, put that aside. Like we got to talk about what's going on here, right? Yeah. So, my family has definitely been my support system, and I've been very blessed that they've been very receptive to me and working with me on things like that. Yeah. But I've heard horror stories of other people who it's rough, you know. Yeah. They don't have anybody to turn to or to lean on, and I could see how that can weigh on people.
Yeah. No, I mean, man, this is I'm taking a lot of this advice for myself too. So, kind of listening to it and see how we can all apply it. It's very important. Trying to balance work and trying to balance your personal life as well. It's huge.
It is.
And I guess like my next question is going back into being a judge. What makes someone a great or a good judge? Like, in your opinion, what makes someone that great of a person to sit on the bench and just be that person to represent?
So let me answer it this way. So I was at a conference maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I think I was in New York. I was at a conference in New York. There were judges from all over the country there, and I was having a conversation with a judge from, I think it was from Atlanta. And I remember him telling me that the best advice he ever got from a judge who had retired was, when I'm gone, if they don't remember who I am, then I did my job.
Really?
Right.
Wow.
And it really made me think about ego, because, a lot of us have egos when we get into elected positions.
Yeah.
And in reality, as a judge, you don't want people to remember who you are. Because if it's more about you, then are you really doing your job, or are you making it more about yourself, right? And I've really thought about that over the past couple of years when he told me that. Yeah. And I will tell you, look, I think what makes a good judge is somebody who has experience in the courtroom, who has experience handling cases, who had a good practice, because that means that they understand what lawyers are going through. Yep. To make a great judge, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, I guess I'm all striving to be that. But I will say that advice has always kind of stuck with me. Yeah. Because one of the other things he told me And I'll never forget, or actually it wasn't just him, it was two other judges. They were all from Atlanta, as a matter of fact. And they asked me, hey, you're brand new. You just got on the bench. What's your judicial philosophy? So,
wow.
whoa. Said, what does that mean? Right. So it kind of blew me away. And it's been something that I think I've slowly been working on, right? Trying to kind of like mold my judicial philosophy.
Yeah.
But like I said, at the end of the day, I think the best advice up to this point that I could see was that, which is when I'm out of here, nobody remembers who I am, then I did my job.
Yeah.
Because then it was never about me. It was, I'm going to go into court.
Yeah.
I'm going to argue. Judge makes a ruling, and we're moving on.
Yeah.
And that's all that matters.
No, and I like that you talk about that, the ego aspect of things, because, sometimes when we think about judges, we think they are very egotistic and non-approachable.
Right.
And so when I see,
and there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, 100%. So
Yeah.
sometimes, which is what drawn me a little bit to you, just because I was like, okay, he's a judge, he's sitting on the bench, and he's a little too friendly, he's a little too approachable, and it just speaks a lot to just individual, who you are, your personality. And I think that, a lot of people need to look at that when it comes to really electing someone who will be that voice of reason.
So a great book, Ego is the Enemy.
Okay.
Okay. Written by, gosh, who wrote it? Okay. That's terrible. I should have remembered his name.
We'll find it.
It's a great book, though.
Yeah.
Of course, my wife, Sonia, made me read it, but it was a good book. It was a great book, right?
Yeah.
And what I will tell you is, I think a lot of the issues that we have, they all stem from our ego.
Yeah.
Of course, you have to have some ego, right? And we, I think those of us who decide to go into public service, you got to have some ego,
Yeah.
right? But I also think that there's a way that you can temper that and try to always remain humble.
Yeah.
And humility, I think, is what we need more of in public service.
I 100% agree. I 100% agree. I think majority of the people I'm able to connect to, even on the political front, are really people that, yes, are approachable, ready to listen, will talk to anybody.
Right.
And
well, and think about it this way. If you're a public servant, okay, and I've said this for a few years now, if you're a public servant, that means that you're there to serve the public.
Yes.
Which means you have to be in the public, to meet the public, to learn what the issues are.
Yeah.
Right? And I think sometimes what happens is some of us, when we get elected, have and again, maybe it goes to the ego, where it's like, no, it's about me.
Yeah.
You want something from me. You need to come to me. And I think it should be the opposite of that. I think what it should be is like, hey, we should be out there talking to everybody. Doesn't mean it's going to help you on your case, right? Matter of fact, not going to help you at all on your case, but at least if you have questions about the process, I can share with you, right? If you got questions about what's going on with the new courthouse, I probably couldn't answer that because I really don't know myself. But my point is, we're out there, and I think we can talk about certain things. We can't talk about everything, but there's certain things we can.
Yeah.
And I think in the past, what has happened is there was always this, I don't want to call it a divide, but it almost seems like a divide between judges and the public, which is, and I got this a lot when I was running, where people would say, well, you guys only come around when you're running.
Yeah.
We never see you guys. You guys don't show up to anything.
Yep.
And my thing is like, of course, we'll go to some political events, but I try to go to more
community,
non-political community events, because I think that's where I'm really going to meet the public.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if you go to political events, you're going to see the same people over and over and over again. You go to community events, then you really get to see what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Right? Because most people in our community, they might vote, but they're not going to show up to a political event. So if I go there, I'll get to meet them. I'll get to hear what their concerns are, or what's going on in the courts and all this kind of stuff. Because inevitably, again, I'm a public servant. The only way I can serve is if I'm out there with the public.
Yeah. No.
So not everybody agrees with that, by the way, but
Oh,
that's
wow,
my 2
really?
cents. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Man, I mean, and I've seen you. I've seen you show up, like, you show up at real estate events, you show up at any other community event, outside of the political realm, and it speaks a lot. People want to see public servants really, really show up, and not just when it's time for elections. And,
Right.
There is the reputation that a lot of public servants have to only come around when it's time for votes.
When it's time for votes.
Yeah, so it always hasn't been the best. And I have a few questions
Yeah.
before
Yeah,
we
of
end
course.
this. I think we could go for hours. Actually.
Of course, yeah.
in
I'm
here.
good, man.
You got your water and everything.
Hey, I got water.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, I guess one thing that I know that you do very well at is mentoring. Really helping younger people, or the young generation, or anyone who really needs advice. And so I can't, go on without asking you, what is something that you would tell someone who wanted to be, or in the position that you're at, someone going through law school, whatever it is, what advice would you give them in just that journey that they're trying to pursue?
So interesting enough, I, other than being arrested, that was my only experience with the legal community. I never had stepped into a courtroom before I went to law school. I'd never worked at a lawyer's office before.
Wow.
When I was in law school, I was a manager and a bartender, but I never actually worked for a lawyer.
What?
Yeah. So I never did anything that was like quote unquote legal up until I started practicing. And I think it was a mistake on my part because everybody, again, when you're young, your parents always tell you, oh, be a doctor, be a lawyer, this
Yep.
and that. So, you might go through years of school thinking this is what I want to be. And I always tell this story to people because it's something that always struck me when I finished school. But I had a good buddy of mine who went to started pharmacy school when I started law school. Mm-hmm. Well, we both moved to Houston, got out school loans, rented apartments, moved to a new place, had all these expenses. So we go through our first semester. He finishes his first semester. I finished my first semester in law school. He does his in pharmacy. Starting the second semester, going into the second semester, he got a job as a pharmacy technician at, I don't know, Walgreens, Kroger, something like that.
Yeah.
And as he's working there, he starts, he's actually in there and he's doing the job, and he starts talking to the pharmacist. And after about 2 months of doing that, he had this like epiphany where he realized that this was not something he wanted to do for the rest of his life. So he lost, a whole year of his life.
Yeah.
All the school loans he had to repay. So all this stuff that had happened because he hadn't actually dipped his foot into that or really truly looked into it. And so I'm a big believer in, and we've been trying to do this, because every time I go and talk to like a school classroom, which I love doing, by the way, I think it's a lot of fun, but every time I go in there, I'll typically tell the kids, hey guys, if you want to come watch court, this is the number to the court. Tell your parents to call. Here's our Facebook thing. Here's an Instagram thing. Message us. Do whatever you want to. We will set it up so you can come and watch court.
Wow.
Out of the thousands of kids that I did that with, I want to say maybe 2 ever contacted us, right? Well, this past summer, by chance, we started getting, but these are more college kids and kids just graduating high school who saw a post of us with, there was a young man from A&M. He was actually a friend of mine who I went to college with. His son is at A&M. He was down for the summer and he wanted to go observe. And so we brought him in and he got to watch a trial, which he thought was kind of neat,
What?
So we posted something. So then after that, we started getting people hitting us up saying, hey, can I send my son? Can I send my daughter? So we had, over the summer, maybe 5-6 people that came in and observed, right? Which I thought was kind of neat. And so I'm always trying to impress upon people, and it doesn't matter about law, just whatever you want to do. Go shadow somebody, go, do whatever it takes to just go see and make sure that's kind of what you want to do.
Yep.
Because for the mentorship part, and like I told you before, I'm big on mentors.
Yes.
And it's a great way for you to meet mentors, right? If you just go and ask somebody, hey, can I just shadow you for the day?
Yep.
Go see what they do, right?
Yep.
I mean, if you want to do law, go shadow an attorney. There's plenty of attorneys that will be like, I don't have to pay you. Yeah, you can jump. Let's go, right?
Yeah.
But you get to see what they do. You get to see what it's really like. Sit in court. Come sit in court with us. Watch the different cases. Watch where things happen. And some people are like, hey, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And some are going to walk out saying like, nah, this sucks. I don't want to do this, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But if you don't have that experience, what if you end up like my buddy going through all that schooling, right? Having to pay back school loans, all this other kind of stuff, and decide like, nah, this isn't for me, man. I think I'm going to do something else. And I think that is, that's wasting potential on stuff that, you should be focusing your energy on stuff that you really want to do. And the only way you're going to know what you really want to do is if you go and check it out first, right? So I don't know if that answered your question.
No,
I kind of went off on a rant there.
That's
Sorry.
really, really great advice. And even for me, I think it's something that I take as like, it's okay to ask for help, ask for advice, and shadowing. People, it's super underrated.
It really is.
You get to experience what you think you like,
right? And
really just think about it before you make that decision. And I think this is something that, my little sister is like, yeah, I want to be a lawyer. I think I'll have her come shadow your court.
Look,
yeah,
I will tell you, and this is an open invitation to anybody. Judge Armando Marroquin, look us up on Facebook or on Instagram. Send us a message, or call the court, County Court number 10. We will set something up so that we can bring you in when we have like things going on, so you can observe and you can see.
Yeah.
And hopefully what will happen is you'll walk away from there with a true experience of what it would be like to be in court. Now, mind you, just because you go and you see court, that's not all that lawyers do.
Yeah.
They do so much more, right? But at least that's a small dose of what maybe some lawyers do. Yeah. And it gives you an idea. And as a matter of fact, there was somebody in court, oh my gosh, a few weeks ago. She's going to be, I think, a freshman up at A&M. Mm-hmm. She showed up because her brother sent her. And she sat through, we talked to her, she got to see some cool stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing here? She's like, well, my brother sent me. And then I'm like, okay. But she's going to be a freshman up at A&M. And she said, but he already wants me to come and see. So I said, well, that's cool, right? But that's an open invitation, anybody.
Yeah, and I absolutely love that you do that. I think that's very helpful, and I mean, that's actually incredible. God bless you for it.
Well, thank you.
And I guess my follow-up question is, I know that we're in a political system, we're in a judicial system of the way we do things and everything. Is there something that you personally wish to see change in the way things are currently being done?
So are you talking about like on the political landscape?
Yes.
So I guess the way I'll answer that is I understand both sides, and I understand that there are some people who are very fired up about their politics. Mm-hmm. I just hope and pray that people will take a step back, take a deep breath, have a discussion, and then at the end of the discussion, we can say, hey, you know what? I don't agree with you, but we're still cool. Yeah. And that doesn't happen anymore, unfortunately. It seems like the more, I guess, the closer we get in this upcoming election cycle, it seems like it gets pretty bad. And of course, social media it's great, but it's pretty bad too when it comes to that stuff, because you've got a lot of keyboard warriors, I think, that will go on there and say things, and I get it. Some people are that's just the way they are. Yeah. They're going to be ugly, and hey, okay, well, that's fine. But I just wish for the most part, people would be able to discuss things, agree to disagree, and let's move on. Yeah. Just because you vote this way or you agree with this doesn't mean that I'm going to hate you. It just means that we don't agree. It is what it is.
Absolutely.
Right?
The political landscape has really like shaped differently a lot. You know, I come from a country where, you know, you can disagree with someone and, you know, you'll be eating fufu or some food the next time, you know?
Right.
And we, for example, in our political system, for around the time I've been alive, we'll have a Christian president and mostly a Muslim vice president. And you look at that and be like, you know, that's very unorthodox in the way things are done. But it just goes to show us, like, we're all humans. You know, we have to start treating ourselves as people.
Right.
And I think when we start seeing ourselves as people, as it's okay to disagree and not get upset and, you know, call each other names, I think that's been a very, very big thing that, you know, seeing that is very heartbreaking. You know, seeing people disagree and even want to pick up arms and hurt each other.
Right.
It really, really just, it baffles me.
Well, and look, don't get me wrong. I love that people get fired up for politics, right? I think that's great. I think that means that, you know, people think that, oh, it's a decline of society. No, I don't think it's that. I think, and what it is that you have people now who are really have strong beliefs, which I think is great. You know, it's just, I think the way some people go about addressing those beliefs, and, you know, when you know, like I had a conversation with somebody about this a while back about social media, arguing on social media. Yeah. And I was saying, you know, I don't think I've ever seen anybody win an argument on social media convincing someone that they're wrong. Right. But yet, if you go on to, you know, whether it's the Monitor or whatever, you get people going back and forth over things. And I mean, I don't think, maybe people have just too much time, right? But, you know, our country, I think, in general, I think the great thing about it is that you have a lot of people who are energized on both sides. Yeah. And I think that that's great. I just hope that they can figure out at the end of this whole thing that there's a way that we can both be energized, we can go fight for what we believe in, and if we lose, hey, that's cool. Maybe we'll win the next one. But we shouldn't hate each other just because we have differing, you know, political views or we feel differently about candidates, you know? I mean, I just don't understand that. And like what I really don't get to is if you go on to, and I don't know, I'm talking a lot about social media, but we're going to be on social media, so that's what I'll talk about. People who will go on social media, somebody will post something about a candidate, and then somebody immediately go on there and start just bashing them. Why? I don't know. I think it's funny, but, you know, I guess that's how engaged they feel or how enraged they feel about certain candidates. But my thing is, I don't care so much about the candidates at this point. I think what people should really focus on are the issues. And not every candidate is going to agree on every issue. You're not going to agree with every candidate on every issue. 100%. But I think at the end of the day, like our presidential election is a good example of this. You might not agree with the candidates. You might not agree with what they say, what they've done. But I think at the end of the day, you're probably going to vote who you feel will do the better job. I hope that's what you would vote for.
100%.
But I think it's gotten so bad that people are accusing people of being this and that just because they're voting for one candidate or the other. And I don't think it should get to that. You know, but that's me, of course. I think I'm, you know, that's me thinking a little differently than most, I think.
I would hope we all think that way. You know, I think, you know, hopefully we get to a point where we look past a lot of that, you know, petty differences that really doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, we're all just, you know, we're all human, we're all figuring it out, and we're all trying to make it work.
Well, so I guess I tell my kids this all the time, but I don't think my kids really listen to me. But I do tell them this. I say, hey guys, look, Republican, Democrat, black, white, gay, straight, whatever you are, okay, just don't be ASS. Don't be an ass, right? As long as you're not an ass, I don't care what you are. Just don't be an ass, right? Because that's what I think more than anything is going to bother me as your father is you're an ass. But if you're this or that, or your political affiliations here or there, whatever, I mean, that's you. Hey, that's your prerogative.
Yep.
Go for it.
You do you.
You do you. Exactly. And so
Yeah.
that's, I just wish more people followed that, but
Yeah.
that's maybe wishful thinking, I think.
Yeah, I think we'll get there.
hope
but,
so.
But so far as we're human and we have differences, it's always going to be
Always going to be there.
Yeah, it's always going to be there, unfortunately. All right, we've really gone past the time for this.
Oh, sorry.
But no.
Sorry.
This is perfect, and I feel like this conversation is never ending. We're going to keep having it, and I'm probably going to have you on here back again, talk about relationships. However, I guess my final question for you is, what is your advice to anyone out there, no matter what they want to do, anyone trying to live a good life? Because I know that these days we're a lot of people are struggling, to find their way, whether it be having to deal with the law, whether it be having to even find good employment, get started on what they want to do. What is your advice to just anyone out there who is trying to get on their feet and just get going?
So that's a really good question. I will say one of the hardest things to do nowadays, because we have so many distractions, is to get yourself centered, right? Some people choose meditation, sorry.
Yeah.
Some people choose prayer. Some people choose, other things, right? I use kind of both. Right?
Yeah.
I pray in the morning. I pray before I go to bed, but I also meditate. Right? Now, meditation is a form of prayer.
Yeah.
Right? But I do both. And when I do it, what I realize is it really helps me kind of center myself to go out in the day. Now, again, that's a tough question, but that's me personally.
Yeah.
If I were to give advice to other people, all I would say is this. It all starts at home, right? And it starts with you. So you have to be happy with you, right? And I think nowadays we struggle with a lot of people who are not so happy with themselves, right? And, there's plenty of help out there, whether it's physical, whether it's mental. There's so much help out there that if people were to start with themselves and get themselves in check and get themselves centered, then I think everything else will kind of fall into place.
Yeah.
Man. But that's difficult. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there are a lot of distractions, a lot going on.
Yep.
So that's probably the best way I could answer that
No,
question.
I love that. And, I was just talking to Barbara about it. And she actually made the same point, is we have to seek help. Ask for help when you need it. We don't have all the answers together. And I think that a lot of times people isolate themselves.
Right.
And so they're not able to seek the mentorship, the help, the coaching that they need. And I think if we're able to get out of our shell and do a lot more of that, I think more people are willing to help than we realize.
For sure.
And so, that's something that even personally for me, I'm trying to do more of. Seek help, seek advice, seek support, and then just, consistently try to be better.
Well, and I'll tell you, you guys have done a great job. And eventually what's going to happen is, right now you're the young guys.
Yeah.
Eventually you become the old guys.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
And so you got to think about, how do I pass it on? Right? How do I, because obviously somebody helped you.
Yes.
How do you, and that's why, again, I go back to the mentorship thing, but how do you pass it on to continue with, the creativity, to continue like doing things and getting bigger and getting better and all this other kind of stuff. And unfortunately in our area, I think sometimes what we have is some people in our area have an attitude of, I don't share.
Competition, yeah.
Right. But in reality, there's plenty for everybody here.
Yeah.
There really is. There's so much abundance here. People just sort of take a step back and realize it. But unfortunately, some of those, and I think we had a conversation earlier about this, but I don't think enough people can remove themselves from the situation to truly see it the way it is.
Yes.
So that's probably another way to answer that too. But yeah.
Amazing. All right.
Well, Matt, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
No, thank you.
No, this is great, man.
For being on here. And we had some really, really great conversations from the law to family. and strikes a really, really important chord. These are conversations that need to be had, and I'm glad that you're out in the community, really talking to people, and getting all these things done. And I really, I have so much respect and love for you. We really appreciate you.
No, thank you. And I will tell you, it's an honor to be invited onto something like this, because nobody ever invites us, man. You know? No, and look, I'll tell you, you guys, and I told you this a long time ago, thinking outside the box, what you guys are doing, man, keep doing it, because this is what this area needs. We need more people like yourselves who are thinking outside the box. And there's a few of you guys down here who are doing some really cool stuff, right? And if you continue to do that, more people will take notice.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And more importantly, you are going to motivate those who are coming up to hopefully see what you guys are doing and say, okay, I can do that, but I'm going to do even better. And that's 100%. How this area will continue to grow, man.
Yeah. And I'm super excited for it. I see so much potential. And, that's why sometimes, I'll go to high schools and, offer my time or whatever, because I strongly believe, the next generation, even though I'm part of the next generation, I still think people younger have so much potential, so many resources that can be used to really, really go out there and make it happen. So I'm super excited.
You should be.
And thank you once again.
No, thank you.
Before we end it, Judge, if you want to share a little bit of your social media handles, I don't know if you know them offhand.
So I want to say it is County Court at Law number 10, Judge Armando Marroquin. That's super long. Yeah. On Facebook. And then on Instagram, I believe it's Judge Armando J. Marroquin.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Make sure to follow. Make sure to support.
Please do.
And thank you so much for coming. Don't forget to subscribe. And we are looking forward to this episode airing. I'm super, super excited and I'm hyped. And I hope this is of value to someone. Welcome. This is Mind of A Geniuz, and we're out.